Welcome, join us as we uncover these spine-tingling tales, each one rooted in real-life experiences. Are you ready to face your fears? Let's begin. Story 1: The Haunting of the Old Mill. In the heart of a small town, an old, abandoned mill had been the center of local legends for generations. Once a bustling hub for industry, it had fallen into disrepair after a tragic accident that claimed the lives of several workers. Whispers of strange occurrences surrounded the mill, shadows flickering in the windows, eerie sounds echoing in the night, and a lingering feeling of being watched. One summer evening, a group of 5 friends, Jason, Mia, Sarah, Tom, and Alex, decided to explore the mill, driven by a mix of curiosity and thrill-seeking. They equipped themselves with flashlights, snacks, and a few ghost-hunting tools they found online. As they approached the dilapidated structure, the air turned heavy, and the atmosphere felt charged with an energy they couldn't explain. Once inside, they were greeted by a musty smell and the sight of rusted machinery, covered in layers of dust. The wooden beams creaked under their weight as they moved cautiously through the dimly lit spaces. Jason, the bravest of the group, suggested they split up to cover more ground, and after some hesitation, everyone agreed. They set a time to regroup, promising to stick to the first floor. As Mia and Sarah explored a dark corner filled with old tools, they heard faint whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. They exchanged nervous glances but decided it was just their minds playing tricks. Meanwhile, Tom and Alex ventured upstairs, where the air felt even colder. They peered through a grimy window and spotted the woods beyond, the moonlight casting ghostly shadows on the ground. Just then, a loud crash echoed from below, causing the girls to scream. They rushed upstairs to find Tom and Alex, who looked pale and shaken. "We saw something," Tom stammered, his eyes wide. "A figure. It was watching us." Doubt crept in, but as they continued their exploration, they noticed the atmosphere thickening. The whispers grew louder, transforming into clear phrases that seemed to taunt them, reflecting their fears and insecurities. Jason, trying to maintain a sense of humor, joked, "Maybe it's just the spirits trying to join our ghost hunting party." As night deepened, the mill became a labyrinth. Hallways twisted unexpectedly, doors they had previously entered now led them to unfamiliar rooms. Panic set in when they realized they couldn't find their way back to the entrance. Every turn felt wrong, and shadows seemed to stretch and close in on them. Feeling trapped, they decided to stick together, but the deeper they went, the more the mill felt alive. They stumbled upon an old control room filled with dusty equipment and a rusted switchboard. In a moment of desperation, they decided to flick one of the switches, hoping it would do something, anything. The lights flickered, and the whispers crescendoed into a cacophony. A sudden chill swept through the room, and the atmosphere shifted. They saw a shadow dart across the doorway, and before they knew it, they were sprinting back, their hearts pounding in unison. Bursting through what they thought was the exit, they found themselves in a room they had not seen before. The air felt suffocating, and the walls seemed to close in. They frantically searched for a way out until finally, they spotted the front door, ajar and inviting. With a final push, they stumbled outside, gasping for fresh air. As they caught their breath, the whispers faded into the night, leaving them with a lingering dread. They vowed never to return, each carrying a piece of the mill's darkness with them. In the following weeks, they began to notice strange changes in their lives, unexplained nightmares, shadowy figures at the corner of their eyes, and a feeling of being watched. Though they tried to move on, the mill's haunting presence stayed with them, a reminder of their fateful night. Story 2: The Girl in the Basement. In the 1980s, a family moved into an old house that had a strange history. The previous owner had mysteriously vanished, leaving only rumors about a girl who once lived there. As the family settled in, they began to notice odd occurrences, objects moving on their own and unsettling sounds from the basement. The basement door was always locked, and the family felt an inexplicable urge to avoid it. However, curiosity got the better of the oldest child, a teenage girl named Emily. One evening, while her family was out, she decided to explore the basement. Armed with a flashlight, she descended the creaky stairs. The basement was cold and damp, filled with old furniture and dust-covered boxes. As she rummaged through the boxes, she stumbled upon a diary belonging to the girl who had lived there years before. The entries grew darker, detailing a descent into despair and isolation. Emily felt a chill as she read about the girl's obsession with finding a way out of the house, which became her prison. Suddenly, Emily heard soft sobbing. Following the sound, she found a small, locked room. Her heart raced as she realized someone was inside. She forced the door open, revealing a dusty, empty space. The sobbing stopped, and an icy wind rushed past her. Panicking, Emily fled the basement, locking the door behind her. That night, she had nightmares of the girl, trapped and pleading for help. The next day, the family decided to leave the house, unable to shake the feeling that something dark resided within its walls. Years later, the house still stood empty, a haunting reminder of the girl who may never have escaped. Story 3: The Stranger on the Phone. In the early 2000s, a college student named Sarah was excited to start her new life on campus. She had just moved into a cozy apartment with a couple of friends and was eager to meet new people. However, her excitement quickly turned to anxiety when she began receiving strange phone calls late at night. At first, it was just heavy breathing on the other end of the line. Sarah tried to dismiss it as a prank, but as the days went by, the calls became more frequent and unsettling. The caller, who blocked their number, eventually started whispering her name, sending chills down her spine. Each time she answered, the same eerie silence filled the air, leaving her feeling vulnerable and exposed. After several nights of sleeplessness, Sarah confided in her friends. They laughed it off, thinking it was a harmless prank. "You're just overreacting," one of them said. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her, stalking her every move. She began to notice small things: a shadow out of the corner of her eye, the feeling of being followed, or the sense that someone was waiting for her when she came home. Determined to regain control of her life, she changed her phone number. For a brief moment, she felt relief. However, just when she began to relax, the calls started again. This time, they were even more specific, detailing her daily routine with alarming accuracy. "I saw you at the coffee shop today," the voice hissed one evening, sending her heart racing. Desperate for safety, Sarah installed a security system in her apartment and began taking different routes home from class, hoping to throw off the stalker. Yet the calls persisted, becoming more threatening. "You can't hide from me," the voice taunted, making her feel trapped in her own life. One evening, after a late study session at the library, Sarah returned home and found her front door slightly ajar. Her heart raced as she pushed the door open, calling out for her roommate. Silence. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up, and she felt an icy grip of fear. Just then, her phone rang again. Trembling, she picked it up, expecting the familiar whisper. Instead, she heard a man's voice. As Sarah gripped the phone tightly, she felt a wave of nausea wash over her. The voice on the other end was low and menacing. "I can see you," he said, his tone dripping with malice. Panic surged through her, and she glanced around her dark apartment, the shadows seeming to shift and dance in the dim light. "What do you want?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause, the silence stretching like a taut wire. "I want to know what it feels like to be afraid," he replied, the words chilling her to the bone. Heart racing, Sarah slammed the phone down and sprinted to the window, peering outside into the darkness. The streetlights cast long shadows, but the street was empty. She quickly locked the door and activated her security system, feeling a slight sense of relief. Yet, the unsettling feeling of being watched lingered in the air. That night, sleep eluded her. Every creak of the building and gust of wind set her on edge. She kept her phone close, ready to call for help at a moment's notice. The calls continued over the next few weeks, each one more detailed, more threatening. The voice taunted her with knowledge of her daily routine, recounting her every move as if he were right beside her. Desperate, Sarah decided to confide in her friends again. They suggested involving the police, and although she was hesitant, she knew she had no choice. The next day, she filed a report, and the officer assigned to her case assured her they would trace the calls. Days passed, and the police managed to trace one of the numbers to a nearby abandoned building. They warned Sarah to avoid that area, especially alone. It felt like a weight had been lifted when she finally felt that someone was taking her fears seriously, but she remained on high alert. One evening, as she returned from class, she noticed a figure standing near the entrance of the abandoned building. It was dusk, and the light was fading quickly. The figure was shrouded in shadow, but something about it felt familiar. As she walked closer, dread filled her. The figure turned, and her heart sank. It was the man from the phone. Sarah froze, panic gripping her as she fumbled for her phone, but before she could react, he took a step toward her. "I've been waiting for you," he said, his voice a distorted echo of the one she'd heard on the phone. Adrenaline kicked in, and she turned on her heels, sprinting down the street. She could hear his footsteps behind her, echoing ominously in the twilight. She glanced over her shoulder, catching a glimpse of his dark silhouette closing in, the fear propelling her faster. Rounding a corner, she spotted a small cafe still open. Bursting through the door, she yelled for help, and the barista and a few patrons turned to look at her, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. She felt a moment of safety as she explained her situation, her voice trembling. The barista called the police while Sarah huddled in a corner, watching the door. Minutes felt like hours as she waited, heart pounding. Just when she thought she was safe, she saw the figure outside, lingering in the shadows. He seemed to know she was there, a sinister grin spreading across his face. When the police arrived, Sarah rushed outside with them, pointing frantically at the figure, but he had vanished into the night, leaving no trace behind. The officers conducted a thorough search of the area but found nothing. Frustration washed over Sarah, mixing with lingering fear. After that night, Sarah remained vigilant, her life a constant cycle of anxiety and dread. The police continued to monitor the situation, but the calls eventually stopped. Yet the shadow of that man loomed over her, a constant reminder of how close she had come to danger. Months later, Sarah decided to move to a different city, hoping to start fresh. As she unpacked her belongings in her new apartment, she found herself checking the locks multiple times before bed. The fear had not completely faded, but she was determined to reclaim her life. Then, one quiet evening, she received a message on social media from a stranger. Curiosity piqued, she opened it, only to feel a rush of cold dread. It read, "I know where you are now." Her heart raced as she slammed her laptop shut, the shadows in her new home feeling darker than before. She had escaped one nightmare, but it seemed that another was waiting just around the corner. Join us in our next video as we unravel the chilling conclusion of Sarah's story, a tale of resilience, fear, and the fight for freedom in the face of relentless darkness. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you won't miss what happens next.